apartment had a peculiar chill, even for late October. It clung to the corners of rooms, a subtle, damp cold that seemed to emanate from the very walls. I dismissed it at first as typical of older buildings, another charming eccentricity of my new, creaky abode. But then came the whispers, soft, guttural sounds that slithered just beyond the edge of hearing, like phantom conversations just out of reach. I was an avid reader, and my bookshelf was my sanctuary. One evening, engrossed in a particularly unsettling novel, I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, as if I were being watched. I'd glance up, expecting to see my cat, Bartholomew, but he'd be asleep, a silent, furry lump on the armchair. The feeling persisted, a gnawing unease that tightened my chest. Then, things began to move, not dramatically, but subtler. A book would be slightly askew, a mug shifted inches from its usual spot. I chalked it up to my own forgetfulness. Bartholomew, however, started acting strangely. He'd stare intently at empty corners, his fur bristling, and let out low, warning growls that were unlike anything I'd ever heard him produce. The whispers grew bolder, morphing into what sounded like distorted laughter, a dry, rasping sound that echoed in the silence when I was home alone. It would make the hairs on my arms stand on end. One night, as I was washing dishes, a particularly loud, chilling giggle seemed to emanate from the darkened hallway. I froze, my hands slick with soap, my heart hammering against my ribs. I called out, "Hello," but only the echo of my own voice answered. That's when I noticed the markings. Small, intricate symbols etched into the condensation on my bathroom mirror after a shower. They were like nothing I'd ever seen, sharp, angular lines that seemed to writhe and twist if I stared too long. They weren't random doodles. They possessed a disturbing symmetry, a deliberate malice. I'd scrub them off, my hands trembling, only to find them reappearing the next day. The most terrifying incident, however, occurred a week ago. I'd gone to bed early, exhausted from a stressful week. I remember the soft weight of Bartholomew settling on my chest, his purr a comforting rumble. Then, nothing. My next conscious memory was waking with a gasp, Bartholomew nowhere to be found. The room was freezing, far colder than usual, and the air was thick with an acrid, metallic scent. I sat up, disoriented. My head pounded, a dull, persistent ache. My mouth felt dry and tasted foul, like old pennies. I stumbled out of bed, my legs heavy, and flicked on the lamp. The shadows in my room seemed to deepen, to writhe with a life of their own. That's when I saw it. On the wall opposite my bed, where the moonlight cast a stark, white rectangle, were the symbols again. But these were different. They weren't etched into condensation. They were painted in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. My blood. A wave of nausea washed over me. I instinctively touched my forehead, my fingers coming away slick and crimson. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen. I needed to call someone. Anyone. But as I stared at the familiar interface, a strange disconnect occurred. The icons seemed alien. The functions I'd used 1,000 times before were suddenly foreign. The whispers returned, louder now, closer. They slithered into my ears, a cacophony of malicious glee. "Ours now," they hissed. "You belong to us." The symbols on the wall seemed to pulse, the dried blood darkening with a horrifying vitality. Bartholomew's usual meow was replaced by a guttural yowl that chilled me to the bone, as if he too were sensing the encroaching darkness. I felt a profound sense of dread, an ancient fear that whispered of things far older and far more terrible than I could comprehend. I was trapped, my mind fractured, my home no longer a sanctuary but a prison, a hunting ground for something that had marked me as its own. Welcome to the Aqeela Files, if you dare to stay. Do you feel it too? The chill, the whispers. They're closer than you think.